Up until this point, acupuncture around the world has been taught with one simple method. Well, I should correct myself. Acupuncture outside of Japan. Now that method is really simple. You've probably already gone through it or you're in the midst of it now. You go to acupuncture school, you graduate, then afterwards you take some CEU classes, continuing education. You learn a new trick here or there, and then along the way, you decide, well, I think I'm doing pretty good in my clinic. I have a busy clinic, I get good results, but there's something always missing. A little nagging voice, something quiet inside your head that says, is this really all there is? Maybe I should do something different. I really feel like I've reached a ceiling in my practice. Or perhaps I really feel like an imposter. Now I know about this because, well, I've graduated from acupuncture school. And after I graduated and worked and also apprenticed in Japan, I came back to the US and I had to learn TCM in order to get my license here from the US body NCCOM. And what I learned along the way is that while I had one foot in tradition and one foot out, really, it was really confusing how everybody else in the world learned. Now I'm telling you this because the paradigm that I came from in Japan was that yes, you went to acupuncture school. Yes, you still graduated. But once you did graduate, you didn't need to get CEUs. Instead, they asked you as a practitioner to find a style that you liked and to start attending the study group of that style. And you did this really for perhaps the lifetime of your practice, perhaps 10, 20 years of your practice. Continued education with 1 to 2 practitioners or maybe even an entire group. Now I think you're beginning to see how things are a little different. And this really was the inspiration for me for doing something drastically different in ShinKyu. Hi there, I'm Maya Suzuki, and because I really like to keep my hands busy, today I'm going to talk to you about ShinKyu and why it's drastically different, why I practice my moxa. This is a practice that I've taught a lot here on the YouTube channel, so if you're interested, you can watch those videos. I'll go ahead and link them in the description box below. But I really want to go through and tell you today how ShinKyu's program is really a different and a fascinating and perhaps exciting step in our industry, and maybe the right step for yours. So ShinKyu University, first of all, was brought about because I saw practitioners coming to Japan trying to learn really advanced protocols and advanced techniques when they didn't even know how to roll a cone of moxa or hold a needle properly, according to the traditional Japanese medicine traditions. And I just kept saying to, at the time, Stephen Brown and Jeffrey Dan, who were helping me run the In Touch Japan tour, they were the people who first started the practice, the workshop. Man, someone should really help these practitioners learn how to get these foundational techniques, these foundational applications of these techniques, really start to embody the medicine, feel the ki before they come to Japan. And I'll never forget that Jeffrey looked at me and he said, well, maybe that's something that you should do, Maya. And I remember telling myself at the time and telling both of them, oh my goodness, no, that's not something I should do. I'm not your person. I'm here to help everybody else, right? I'm here to facilitate learning, not necessarily be the one teaching. And that idea kind of stuck with me for a really long time. And finally, when I moved back from Japan to the US, I decided to do something about it. And what that thing that I did was ShinKyu. So I want to tell you, first of all, let's talk about what the normal scenario is outside of ShinKyu. And that is, you take a class, right? You learn a new trick. Let's say it is moxibustion. And then let's say you are learning a half grain moxa practice. And then you take that back to your practice and you try it out. Maybe you try it on a patient or two. Maybe you burn someone. Maybe you aren't even confident to use it on a patient, and you start getting these questions. You're like, well, I don't understand why it burned someone. I don't understand why I got this result with this client and this result with another client. But unfortunately, your teacher is no longer hosting the workshop. The weekend has passed. the exciting learning together is past. Now you are alone in your clinic. And so what ends up happening from that is you start to lose confidence, and you as a practitioner stop trying that new technique, or maybe you only use it for the things that you learned how to use it for in the workshop. Perhaps you don't go ever past the protocol. And what that ends up doing is making you feel quite stuck in your practice. And so in order to get unstuck, you sign up for another lecture. And that next lecture teaches you a new technique, and you start going through the hamster wheel. Now, I think you can probably start to envision how this can become a little bit annoying for some practitioners and kind of start making you resent the CEU system, right? It doesn't mean that you're not a good practitioner. It simply means that, you have to do it, and every time you do it, you lose a little bit. You might gain a little, but you lose a little in the process. So what ShinKyu really does differently in everything is that because it's a continuing mentorship program, meaning once you invest in ShinKyu, you are in ShinKyu for a lifetime. You are allowed to come and learn for a lifetime. But what we really do different in this first stage is break down what the foundations are. So for example, half grain moxa, that cone right there that I rolled was a little too big. This cone right here fell down. When I was talking with my hands over here, I dropped the incense. Maybe I should be careful when I'm talking and relating to people more. How do I make that better, right? And so we take your moxa apart, and we really start to break your technique apart and do it really intentionally, of saying, okay, I need you to relax your shoulders down, or I need you to hold your hands a little closer to what you're treating, or anything. And we really start to break down the technique. So with every step of this phase, every single moment that you are treating, you're able to get another hint on how to make it better and how not to do it. And we're able to do that month by month, year by year, if necessary. And the beautiful thing about this is it really starts to grow confidence in your practice, because you as a practitioner now know that every technique that you're doing either correctly, or like that moxa I put down, it fell over. You're saying, oh, that wasn't correct. I know now how to correct it, or I know now how to deal with it. And this allows you to have so much more variability in your practice, especially in what I call this foundational stage. Now, before I go any further, I would love to ask you, do you feel like this was the education you got when you were in school? Now, it's okay if it is, and it's okay if it's not. I'd love to know. Let me know what school you went to, and if you feel like you got a really hands-on foundational education. Let me know in the comments below. Okay, so for the second phase of ShinKyu, we really go into clinical application. And we go into this because this is what I've noticed most practitioners really struggling with. Yes, maybe they have a great technique, maybe they have really good skills or really good instincts, really good abilities to feel key right off the bat. However, when they get into the clinic with a really difficult client, sometimes they go white, or maybe they're unsure what to do when they're having a hard day, right? They're tired that day. And for some reason or another, it just doesn't work the way you expected it to. You don't get the right result. You don't get the result you expected. You get a good result with this patient, with Gary, but with Mike over here, you get an awful result. What was different? I don't know. Your technique was the same. And so these questions really start to pop up. And so what happens is you start to reach out to people in maybe your community. Maybe you have a good acupuncturist friend or a mentor from school, and you start asking them, usually over email, right? Or you maybe even you go on Facebook, probably the worst of them all, and you ask patients, other practitioners, hey, I have a patient with cerebral palsy and they have A, B, and C symptoms. What would you do? And people will answer on Facebook, oh, well, you need to give this test, and they might have worms, and they need this formula and that formula. But herein lies the problem. All of those practitioners have a different background than they're pulling from. None of those practitioners are offering up a space where you can actually have a true conversation about your practice. And none of those practitioners, because they do not have the same background as you, and you are not more than likely studying the same things, are going to come to the same answers or the same frustration points even. And so what ends up happening is you as a practitioner start to reel in your head and you just go at it on your own and you try to figure it out. Now, to a degree, right, our patients are our best teachers and our patients really do teach us a lot. However, there's always going to be that case that's really difficult. And so where ShinKyu really does things differently here, rather than causing frustration and making you reach out to people who don't study the same thing, don't have the same background, don't have the same goals, or perhaps do, but you don't really know. Instead, what we do is we have a like-minded community. Everyone who comes through ShinKyu has access to the exact same material. Everyone who comes through ShinKyu gets the same amount of teaching as long as they show up for it. And everyone at ShinKyu has a very similar goal, and that is to really bridge their practice from TCM into traditional Japanese medicine. And alongside this, everyone in ShinKyu has mentorship from myself and mentorship from my teachers. And so they're able, when they get these questions, we're able to break down what you did, what you didn't do, what you saw, what you missed, and also what techniques that we've already studied very, very technically and very specifically and very intentionally, right, to direct our ki specifically where we need it to be. We've already studied those techniques together ad nauseum. So by the time we get to this stage, I can just say to you, you know what, that cone of moxa was too big. You needed to do a dispersive cone, but a little bit less heat. Or perhaps you missed a specific part in their hara that you hadn't noticed. There's lots of little things here that you can really point out. And what that does is it helps you to have a guided and poignant answer to every single question that you have, or helps you even better find the answers to your questions in a way that makes sense based on the information you've studied with the rest of the community. Now, you're probably already seeing how amazing this can be, that you can do all of this work. Yes, it's all online still at this point, and you can do this work together as a community and still be in your hometown, in your room, in your clinic, without having to travel 6 hours, 5 hours, 3 days, right, to get to a workshop. You can see how this can really start to make a difference in your practice. But the really cool thing is yet to come. So what the best part of ShinKyu, and my favorite part personally, is the last phase of ShinKyu, and that's the elevation stage. Now, in the elevation stage of ShinKyu, we take all the material that you've learned and we elevate it to a whole new level. Now, the reason why we do this at the last stage and in person is because it's a little different than the rest of the industry. Now, the rest of the industry, of course, goes straight either to in-person workshops where they lecture you and you don't really do much. It's not a lot of hands-on work, or they go to online lectures where you're also sitting and also listening to someone lecture or practice, right? But you're not doing the hands-on work. Now, ShinKyu is 100% different. What ShinKyu does instead is everything that we do is hands-on. Even when I have you learn theory, I ask you to move your hands like I'm doing right now with you. And when we get into the last phase, we culminate the learning that we've been doing over the past 6 months, year with you, or even longer possibly. And we say, do you remember when I talked about making your half grain just a little bit hotter? Or do you remember when I talked about how to hold your hand a little bit differently? The relaxation here, this is what I'm talking about. This is what moxa should feel like. This is what your Shonishin should feel like. And so we can, instead of starting at, this is how you roll a cone of moxa, we can start on, this is how to truly make your moxa amazing. And it's a whole different level of learning that you can get in a workshop, and that we can still continue to build upon once you come back to the online workshops. So I think you're starting to see how ShinKyu really is an amazing, amazing program and how it really does flip the rest of the industry on its head. I would love to know from you if this sounds like something you would like to participate in. And if it is, I would love to talk to you. You can chat with me via a link that's put in the description box below. And I'd really love to talk about what you want to accomplish, what's holding you back from accomplishing it, and what do you dream for the future of your practice. All right, everyone, thank you so much for watching. It was truly a pleasure to learn with you today. Hopefully you were practicing your moxa right alongside. If you weren't, go ahead, start from the beginning of this video again, break out your moxa practice, and let's practice together. And please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to be notified of future videos coming out all about traditional Japanese acupuncture and moxibustion. Now, if you're interested in going back to your half grain practice, you're going to want to check out this video right over here.